I mean, 2008 was a short crop. They had problems with rot, different harvest dates. I mean, it was so complicated. Some people who harvested really late, the difference in the quality was so much from the early harvesters. In 2009, some of the problems were a little bit of overripeness on producers that let it go too long, because it was one of those vintages that there was no rain during harvest. So when they look at the weather report, they say, oh, I'm just going to keep going and let it hang and pick some super ripe grapes. And one of the criticisms is that a few producers just let it go too long and harvested too late. So you get a little bit of that overripe, but Americans sort of like overripe. But then you get, some of the writers have said they think '09 is a very, very good vintage, but they're not going to like rave about it like '05 because there was so much fruit that it destroys some of the terroir, which just absolutely kills me. You have to have a lousy vintage to taste terroir because there's no fruit. So what do you want? You want fruit or you want dirt? If you want dirt, then eat some dirt. It's just, you can't win. No matter what. So, and then the way the writers review things these days, it's all these tasting out of barrels, and it's a 3-point swing. So what's the difference between 91 to 94, 92 to 95, 89 to 92? Is it the top of that? Is it at the bottom? Is it in the middle? So you can throw all those scores right out the window. The only thing that matters is, taste them today and make up your own mind. Because reading about them, even reading my notes, you're wasting your time because I write them and then 6 months later, it's different. The wine's different. What's the stage when you taste the wine? Have they been racked? Are they filled with gas? Are they reductive? There's so many factors and that it's just a point in time. So like here, some of these, as we go through them, I'll let you know what's bottled and what isn't bottled. But a fair amount of these wines are not bottled. And what I did was I chose some things because it's a small group, and some of these wines we're going to taste, I only get 20 or 30 cases for the country. There's quite a few, and as we go through, literally, we could divide up everything that comes in the country from this next few tastings. So I might get in trouble, and I'm a little worried, doing consumer events with things I get so little of, but you're getting some very unique wines and samples. The only samples in the country are what you're going to taste. Literally on maybe 6 or 7 of these, the only samples I shipped in the country. And in the back, the last 3 wines, the Thibault Ligier Belair producer had a mix-up. He pulled them out of the barrel in February, and instead of shipping them out directly to California, he shipped it to my house in D.C. So I literally had to take the bottles, put them in styrofoam, and ship them out here. So they've had a little extra. So we'll see how they show.
To make sure it was worth the fray, right?
Well, I got a couple barrel samples of Richebourg, and I was like, am I going to do a consumer event? Or I don't have enough. I already oversold, so I drank them already.
Now we know how you get in trouble.
Yeah. But I didn't drink them. I only spit. I don't drink anymore. Exactly. Where is my cup? I have a cup. Actually, I'll probably be the only one spitting. Thank you. All right, so we're going to do, there's one producer that I don't represent anymore, so if you're wondering why there's no Bruno Claire, I decided in 2009 that if I tasted in Burgundy and tasted '09 vintage, I would buy just about any producer. It was almost impossible to fail in '09. But the problem with these producers is if you have an off vintage, some producers do better than others in off vintages. And if you have a large selection of producers, you can't do the right thing as an importer to all of these growers. You can't represent a lot of them because you have to be prepared to lose money some vintages. In a 10-year span, I'll make money easily 2 out of 10. That'll be '05 and '09. I'll break even on the '06s, the '03s, the '02s. But '04, '07, '08, very difficult. I'm sure we lost money. But you can't do that across the board and sell 15,000 cases of wine at no profit. And that's really the Burgundy business. You really can't get rich on the Burgundy business. Whites are a lot easier, but reds are very, very difficult. So when I went to Burgundy with the 09s, it's almost a perfect vintage as far as there's quantity, there's quality, there's a lot of fruit. There wasn't anything problematic about the growing season. It never got really, really hot, so the grapes didn't shrivel up. Flowering was fine. Harvest, there was absolutely no rain. There was nothing. There was a couple hailstorms. Nobody had production problems. Even if you overproduced, you still made good wine. And the beauty of the vintage is, no matter what the appellation, from the bottom to the top, they all taste good. Some will say, well, you don't have to buy the upper ends. You don't have to spend an incredible amount of money because you can get just as much pleasure with the lower ends. But that whole thing about terroir, maybe now you're not going to get a sense, but as that sort of upfront baby fruit develops, the terroir will, that will go away, and then the terroir will be there, and it is there. And I've done so many events, and each wine is different. Each wine has its own identity. So I've got a collection of growers. I've got Moreys, Guayos, which we don't ordinarily taste a lot of Guayo because he doesn't like to send barrel samples, but luckily he bottled just in time, so these really arrived only about 3 weeks ago. But we'll start in with Vincent Morey, Santenay Gravier, which is the first one on the left. So in 2007, Vincent's father, Bernard, retired and wanted to sell more wine under his label, and then I'll have the two kids, Vincent and Thomas' labels too. I would have 3 labels of the same wine. I said, I don't think so, Bernard. So he was not happy. But then the kids said, thanks, because we don't want to compete against our father. So he literally stopped in 07, and reds, it's a much smaller percentage of their production than whites. They do make some very interesting reds. Vincent married Sophie, and Sophie has a lot of vineyards in Santenay and Chassagne, and this one vineyard, Santenay Gravier, is from Vincent's wife.
What's her family?
I don't even know her last name. I mean, I literally, don't see her. I mean, it's like the 2 boys, we go to the restaurant Chassagne, and that's it. But she's got a lot of vineyards, much more than Thomas' wife, which is Sylvie. So, Santenay Gravier, I mean, the whole thing in Burgundy is, I was driving around with Vincent and Thomas, and everybody we passed he waved to. And I was like, I couldn't live in a town like this where I said, do you know every single person you pass on the road? He says, yeah, I know every single person. It's like, I couldn't do that. That's a small town. Santenay is got a lot of good value in the vineyards because it's almost all hillside. There's really no sort of flat land in Santenay. So you get some stressed vineyards, lower production than a lot of other appellations because there's just no flat land. A little bit more limestone than clay, so you get some elegance, but you also get a rustic character out of Santenay. Gravier is one of the largest Premier Crus in Santenay. Is this the first time for most of you tasting 09s? Yeah.